the electric problem, blah, blah, blah. I know I've been pulled off in a field before now, but that's a completely different story. And welcome to another episode of A Wolf is Wheels. This one's going to be film done in quite a few parts. We're going away in the motorhome, which is a 2021 Autosleeper Kingham panel van conversion with a 2.2 boxer engine, which has been reviewed on this channel quite a few times with my thoughts on it. But something we've never done before with it is actually take it abroad, and particularly for the thick end of a month. So this film is about that. I think it's going to end up being cut into several parts because it could otherwise be quite a bit long. However, before you switch off and say, oh, I don't really want to watch somebody else's holiday snaps, and I don't blame you, because there's nothing really worse than somebody else's holiday pictures when you weren't there. This isn't actually going to be about that. This film is going to be about what is the van like to live with on a reasonably long-term basis, using it to stop for 1, 2 or 3 nights. I think that's the longest for any one place, is 3 nights. So constantly packing, unpacking, and using it sort of pretty much as intended. But what are the shortcomings of doing it in a small van? Because where we've done these sort of tours before, and we've been around most of Europe, we haven't done Spain, but we've done France, Germany, Poland, Italy, Belgium, Holland, so quite a lot, but we've always done that in the A class, which we no longer have. So really this is just sort of a bit of a thought process around, okay, so what's this van like for this sort of touring? So as I say, it'll be in several parts because it'll be too long otherwise. And we're about to set off once I get my final things packed in the van. And we'll also give you a few driving impressions of the different roads and how people drive and behave in different countries, because certainly when in Italy or when in Rome, do as the Romans do, and so on. Anyway, that's it for now. I'm just going to move across to a map to show you roughly where we're going, and from there I probably won't speak to you until we're somewhere in France tomorrow. Tomorrow, but it depends what the trip's like down to Dover and so on. Anyway, until later. So the rough route we're going to be taking, I'll just show you on this map. We're starting off from sort of north of England up in Yorkshire. We take the ferry, drive down to Dover. We'll get the ferry. We go through France to Reims, which is sort of there. Then we go across to Luxembourg, which is there, just stay in Luxembourg City. Then we go over to stop near Wiesbaden. Then we travel east to Nuremberg, which disappointingly the Nuremberg Ring racetrack is nowhere near it, and I was really wanting to take a run around that. We go on to Prague. From Prague we go down to Brno, which is the second biggest city in the Czech Republic. We then go across to Slovakia. Can't remember where we're stopping there, but basically we then go to Budapest, and then down to this end of the lake. We come back up to Vienna for a few days. We go to a place I can't pronounce in Czechoslovakia, and then back up, sort of retracing our steps back over here, back up this way, and back onto the ferry in about a month's time. And we're going with these people called Crossings Motorhome Tours. So the highlights, as you see, are basically Budapest, Prague and Vienna. So so we're going with the Crossings Motorhome Tour people. We've been with them before. We went to a trip around Poland. It took about a month to do a complete tour of Poland, and it was a great trip. Okay, it's not the cheapest way of doing it, but it is completely hassle-free. Everything is booked. You get a guidebook that basically says, this is where we're going to stay, this is where you're starting off, here is a route that you can take, this is what you can do on the way, and we'll see you tonight. So there's never any pressure to, there's no convoy travel or anything like that. But anyway, that's the route, as I say, we'll talk about this a bit later on as things develop. Well, okay, I said the next time I'd probably speak is when we were in France, and we aren't in France, and I'm speaking to you again. We're actually stopped at the Gonna Be More services on the A1, and because basically we wanted our sandwiches and coffee, and being a cheapskate, I don't like to buy my things at the motorway services. I think last time I did it cost us nearly £20 for 2 of us, and I've got better things to do with 20 quid. However, what's the van like? Well, it's driven really well, but we've got a slight issue. Insofar as this panel here, which is where all the main things come on, as you can see, is just flashing. Often these flashing on a YouTube or video is because the refresh rates are different, but no, this is just flashing. That sort of indicates a problem, and I know it's a problem because the van is fitted with a tracker, and I've had the tracker people on telling me, is everything okay? We've had a signal that the van isn't. Now that's actually really helpful, because I know that if a particular fuse blows, it sort of looks as if the battery's been disconnected. So it's a simple thing of fixing a fuse which actually lives under the settee here. Sort of, it isn't behind this because that would be far too helpful. It's actually on top of the battery, which is in there. Of course, it's not the first time that particular fuse would have blown. If you've watched the previous video, in which I think it says 2 years Autosleeper Kingham, what's gone wrong, it was mentioned then. And yes, it has been an upgraded fuse, but even that seems to have blown. But never mind, once bitten twice shy, so I now carry some spares. So when I've had my coffee, I'll put the fuse in and we'll head off. And I might just speak to you again, actually in a jiffy, because there's some more things I've thought of, and Anne's about to drive, so I'll do that next. Well, yeah, I said that I'd thought of some other things that people might or might not find interesting about the van. The van, as I said earlier, it's a 2021 Autosleeper Kingham based on a long wheelbase Peugeot Boxer. So it's 6.36 metres long, it's a 2-berth van. There's plenty of information about the van in other videos on the channel, which you may or may not have watched. Anyway, the thing is this, that I thought it was quite interesting, was that we're going away for basically a month, and have we had enough room really for everything we want? I think from a clothing perspective we definitely have. I actually don't have a month's worth of pants and socks anyway, so I've managed to put in a fortnight's worth, and I think Anne's done about the same, so we're going to have to do some washing. But yeah, there's been absolutely acres of space. Now the fridge is pretty empty because, of course, post-Brexit we're not allowed to import so many different things into the EU, even for personal use, even though in fact many of the items originate in the EU anyway. So the fridge is empty apart from some zero alcohol beers, and everything else we've got is in tinned or is permitted goods, you know, such as rice and pasta and things like that. So we will be stopping for a super shop somewhere in France, but not too near the tunnel, the ferry ports, for obvious reasons. Anyway, so there's plenty of room in the van. We did have to repack a few bits because we don't have the dogs with us on this trip. So a lot of the dogs' paraphernalia has of course been left behind, which has been very helpful. But from the perspective of everything else that we might want to bring, we've actually got everything in that we want, including our 2 folding bikes, which are Bromptons. They were probably the biggest thing to find a space for, but they went actually under the bed at the back but we did have to put the ramps inside the van as opposed to under the bed in the sort of the garage space where they would normally live. That aside, it's just not been a problem getting everything in that we wanted, and certainly if we didn't have the bikes, then we'd have plenty of space, but we want to take advantage of the various places in Europe that we're going to be visiting and go and sort of see the local towns without necessarily always going on the public transport. We did this successfully in Poland, as you can see from the pictures which I'm just sort of overlaying now, and we had a great time. But anyway, that's all for now, and I will probably not talk to you until we arrive at tonight's destination, which is actually in Folkestone, and I might even show you the fuse situation that needs changing. So, as promised, we're just going to look at the fuse now we've got on site as to what the problem is. You can see the battery lives under the settee, which I've taken all the stuff off. It's just there, and just there is a fuse and a fuse holder, and just there is a broken 20 amp fuse. So once I replace that fuse, which I've got plenty of, all will be well. So there you are. What's the van like? Well, I think tip number one is if you're going on a trip, make sure you've got some fuses with you. Well, we're now in France, just outside Rheims. It's been quite a long drive down. I think, as far as I'm aware, we still have 12 volt electrics, which is good. And we're now done. How far are we from home? Trip distance A, we've done 474 miles since we left home and averaged 33.9 to the gallon, which is pretty good. Now, I said it's not going to be holiday snaps at the beginning, and it's not. So really, this is just to sort of sum up the first day. We had a bit of a hassle with the boat because just as the ferry was pulling into the port of Calais, it was announced that, as ever, the French had gone on strike, and this time it was the linesmen and they're the guys that tie the boat up. So they're pretty important, and they weren't on strike when we left Dover at 8:30, but by the time we arrived, hour and a half later in Calais, they were on strike. The captain sounded a bit upset by this, obviously, so we circled outside the port for a little bit, and believe it or not, the strike was over and we were only probably 40 odd minutes late arriving into port anyway. So that made no difference, all of which is a bit irrelevant for the overall scheme of the film. And the thing is this, I did say that I'd talk about the van and what it's like to drive and the rest of it, and you know, we've had quite a long day. I mean, I drove down from Calais to Rheims, and that's sort of a couple of 100 miles on the non-toll roads, which were interesting. And you know, okay, I'm tired because I've driven 200 miles, but I'm not aching. It's just like a car to drive. It's quiet. The visibility is really, really good. I mean, we're in a right-hand drive van in a left-hand drive country. And the fact that, you know, the mirror over here, the passenger's mirror, gives you a really good view. And from the driver's seat, if you just glance over your shoulder over there, you can see, you know, out of the windows at the side of the van. So in terms of blind spots, you don't really suffer from blind spots at all. So it's been pretty straightforward to drive. That's it, you know. I mean, in terms of the camping experience, well, we've only stayed one night and it was pretty much as would happen in the UK, the electric problem, blah blah blah. So I'm going to wrap this up now and probably talk to you tomorrow when we're in the next destination, which is Luxembourg. But just before I sign off, just out of interest, this site we're on in Rheims, R-I-E-M-S, however you pronounce it, we're all actually parked on the road because it was hammering down with rain and the grass became a bit waterlogged, and the site owner is a bit concerned about more rain tonight, rendering it pretty unusable, and sort of the vans all having to be towed off in the morning. I know I've been pulled off in a field before now, but that's a completely different story. But the guy didn't seem very keen on doing it. Anyway, that's it for tonight, and we'll see you tomorrow. Well, we've made it now into Luxembourg. A relatively straightforward 130 odd mile trip, and drove. I said I'd include some comments about the different standards of driving, etc. on the continent. And having basically come mostly through France, the standard of driving in France actually I think is a lot better than the UK. Certainly the lane discipline is, and the way people merge onto the faster roads. There's no messing about. They actually indicate, they know there's a gap, they accelerate into it and come on. It's great. Nobody seems to hog the middle or outside lanes. They overtake and they come back in. So there's a lot that could be learned from that. Belgian roads, we knew from previous experience, were horrendous, and as soon as we crossed over into the Belgian border, the road surface just deteriorated. It really was on like a line between a nicely surfaced French road and then suddenly roads that make Britons look great. You know, we complain about the potholes at home, but really reef. Go to Belgium, then you'll know what potholes really are. Anyway, all is well. Now, yesterday I did mention about the squeaky microwave, and I think I've cured that, and I'll come on to that in a second. But just before I do, while I'm sat here rather than moving, I'll just mention about Luxembourg itself, which is a bit of a busy little place, but has in fact the cheapest fuel in Europe, they say, and it's state controlled. So actually there's no point in shopping around. Every petrol station has it at the same price. So we came in on one of the auto routes, and the price on the auto route was €1.49 for a litre, as it was everywhere else. So there's none of this price gouging that goes on in the UK, which is really useful. But it did mean that when I filled up, I basically came over the border on fumes. The warning light was on, and we filled up here in Belgium, and we put in €120 worth of fuel, which was 80 litres, which is great, and that would get us probably down into certainly Czechoslovakia before we have to refill, I would think. But anyway, onto the microwave. So here we have the offending microwave. And I did remember that actually down here, I'm just trying to get the light right, yeah, you can see one there, and then there's another one there. These are actually screw-in legs, and this one here, I think it got itself a little bit loose, so it could move about. But now I've sort of put both of those down a bit more, and it seems to have fixed the problem. So this microwave is now much less rattly than it was, and I think on the roads in Belgium certainly would have made it squeak if it was going to. So that's a good thing. We're only on day 3 of the camping, and so far we're still on the water that we left the UK with. The waste isn't full and the toilet's not had to be emptied. But when you're touring around, the Autosleeper Kingham does have quite a small tank. It's 60 litres of fresh water, and I think it's 45 of waste, and you do have to empty them every 2 to 3 days. Now the way we're touring, that's not going to be a problem, because we're going to leave here tomorrow morning and head down into Germany. But before we go from here, we'll empty all the water and the waste, deal with the toilet, and then refill with fresh water. We're then in Germany for 3 days, and from there, before we leave, we'll empty and fill. So you sort of get into a routine of filling and emptying every 2 to 3 days. To save the films getting too long, I'm actually going to wrap this one up here from Luxembourg. We're just about to head out into Luxembourg town, but as I've said many times and will continue to say, this is not somebody's holiday diaries. This is more like how's a van standing up to sort of basically a month's worth of touring around in Europe. And so tomorrow we're heading off to Germany, as I said, and I'll report back in from Germany and give a little bit of an update, I think, on some of the packing, because it's been 3 days and I think we've found a couple of bits of packing compromise that I've made that we're going to have to change, because it's not quite as easy to live with as it should be. So, as I say, till tomorrow, that's it for now, and I'll see you in the next episode of Wolfie's Wheels. Oh, but before I go, don't forget, if you like it, then please give it a thumbs up, share it, tell your mates, and of course if you subscribe, ka-ching ka-ching, not for me but as in the bell, then it's great, because it makes the films easier to find and it helps other people find the films. And I think the Autosleepers are quite a popular little vein of films for people to watch. I think we've had sort of 15,000 plus views on one of them. I think in total there are probably about 25,000 of all of the films on the Autosleeper we put together. So it just makes it easier for other folk to find. So if you'd like to do that, that'd be great. I don't make anything out of the channel and I don't want to, and it doesn't cost me anything to subscribe. Anyhow, back to the plot. I'll see you in another edition of Wolfie's Wheels. Bye.